welcome back to Afterglow. You're listening to episode 66, and this is also the second episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Secret of the Reviews. That name was come up with by the guest that we're going to be having on this week, Soups, from the Secret Levels Discord. Soups was previously on Big Meaty Men Slap and Meet in March for the Retro Wrestling Game Tournament, and he'll be rejoining us this episode talking about his memories and thoughts of the Super Nintendo version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Games that had this name were also released on the regular Nintendo and Sega Genesis, but I believe the Super Nintendo version is the superior version of all those, and we'll be discussing that game after our music break.
Tamed by success, the turtles lost their savage edge. Greed is dead. It's a new breed carved from the streets. Concrete fists batter alien flesh, one on one. As power joins forces with rage, ripping through fear, and no one sheds a tear for mutilated mutants. Giant warriors crushed by street tough turtles who have shed soft shells for a hard dose of reality in Konami's Tournament Fighters.
Alright, welcome back. This will be the second game we're covering for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where we're going to be checking out the Super Nintendo, specifically version of Tournament Fighters, which I'm sure we'll be getting into why that's the one we picked a bit later. But we do have a guest, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yo, I'm Soups. I was on the Meaty Men Slap and Meet in March Spectacular, and you can find me on the Secret Levels Discord, just goofing around.
And let it be known that you had much better game choices than I had in that.
I mean, when it's your main collection, you're gonna have a long list of things to pick from.
Right, mine were mostly picks from nostalgia viewpoints, whereas you've had some really solid game picks. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it.
It worked out in the end. Nostalgia won.
I mean, to a degree, but that also was not one of my picks.
Fair.
Alright, so going to Ninja Turtles, this is a fighting game released in the era that shortly after Street Fighter II came out. How did you end up hearing about this game or getting a copy of it?
Well, I never had a copy of it, and I've only played it once other than this week. And the time I played it was probably, I'm going to be honest, one of the worst periods of my life. I was homeless at the time. Didn't know it, but we were homeless. Dad told us we were camping for the summer, and it spilled into a month and a half of school, and it's like, hey, why aren't we in school? We wound up hopping from house to house and stayed at our cousins. They had a Super Nintendo and one game, and that one game was Tournament Fighters.
So you played this one quite a bit during that time period, then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right on.
I seem to remember it as being pretty good. But I played the US version, I played the European version, and I played the Japanese version. And let me tell you, my memory was not what it seemed.
So I take it to say upon the replay, you're not a big fan of it.
Yeah, you could say that.
Well, I got it in a bargain bin back whenever I was a kid. I didn't have many Super Nintendo games at the time. Think this might have been even like my third or fourth game. I just happened to see it was a Ninja Turtle game, so I picked it up. And at the time, I had also had Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis to kind of compare it to. I will say I think this game looked a bit better than the Genesis version of Street Fighter 2, although even at that age, I could tell this is a straight rip-off of Street Fighter 2 with how the characters act.
Yeah, you can kind of cheese some of the fireball motions to get fireballs in this game.
Yeah, and the AI is not really good at blocking them. Now, if you're going two-player, it's not nearly as bad, but if you're one-on-one, you can cheese fireballs and pretty well win fairly quickly.
Yeah. The big issue that this game has that Street Fighter did not have is it's very slow. It feels super sluggish on its standard speed. You can go in the options and crank that up a little bit, but it's not very fast, which is something you kind of expect from a fighting game.
Well, I think that they tried to go for the speed that the original Street Fighter 2 release was before Turbo came out, and you could actually play it at a reasonable speed. Because I feel like Street Fighter 2, the original release, was kind of on that slow side as well.
Yeah, I suppose so. I grew up playing a lot of Turbo, so that's the Street Fighter 2 I knew.
Yeah, Turbo was a huge improvement, in my opinion, as far as the speed and everything. This game also made a few interesting choices in the roster. Of course, you get the four primary turtles, but then you get a version of Shredder, I'm going to go with, because he's not Shredder in this, they call him Cyber Shredder. I don't know whether he's supposed to be like a clone of the original or what. And then there's a...
Yeah, sorry, I jumped into the story mode, and it was unrelenting, like vicious loss after loss after loss. I put probably 40 minutes and couldn't get past the first opponent in story mode. I dropped the difficulty down, and then it was just a breeze after that.
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of middle ground on the difficulty. You either can stomp the computer or the computer stomps you.
Yeah. There's no in between, really.
Which is a little weird. It took me a while to get to the point to where I could beat the game, and even then, I don't think I ever beat it with every character. I think there's only, even whenever I was a kid, like 2 or 3 characters I could beat it with, which is kind of weird because each character only has like 3 special moves.
Yeah, and I think all 3 of them have like a fireball-esque move.
Yeah, from what I've seen,
there's only
like the primary 4
different
turtles.
moves.
The primary 4 turtles all have some kind of fireball.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the game looks great, so it's got that going for it.
It's a beautiful game, and it's the best version of Tournament Fighters, because if you play the NES and Genesis version, some people will defend them. I think they're trash.
Yeah, I've watched a little bit of playthrough for them. They just don't hold up. Not as well as the Super Nintendo version, at least.
Right. And then the Super Nintendo also had a pretty decent roster of 10 people, but then we've got this mystery character called Asuka, who, at least with all the other characters, they were either in the main continuity on the cartoon, or they're in the comic books, if you hadn't heard of them. Like War, Wingnut, Armagon, those were all comic book characters. Asuka Wasn't in the comics at all either. I don't know whether she started out as a April O'Neil and then they changed her, or if they were trying to maybe, and this is my theory, this is complete conjecture, the female lady in the third Ninja Turtles movie, the one that one of the turtles kind of has a thing for. I
Mm,
wonder if Asuka was supposed to be her, and then the third movie flopped, and they decided what like it's not a good idea to have her in the game, so they just kind of retconned it.
that would make sense.
It's all conjecture. But I didn't think this game was bad in two-player mode. I don't know if you ever had the opportunity back then to play it multiplayer.
Oh yeah, it was tournament fighters, so we had tournaments. You know, all the aunts and uncles and cousins, and my brother, all sitting around
Did you
trying to
have
figure out how to throw a fireball.
Did you have a character you gravitated towards?
Um, Growing up, I've always been a Michelangelo guy, so
Yep, I used him a lot, and I used Asuka a lot, being as how she was the only female character. And then I leaned towards Cyber Shredder for a little bit, but even if with the game speed boosted up a bit, he feels really slow.
yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
guess that's kind of dated robotics technology, right?
I assume I have no clue. I thought that maybe since he was slower, he'd hit harder, but that's not the case. What did you think about the specials in the game with the charge meter?
They were interesting. Growing up, never figured out how to do any of them, and I don't think I ever did any this time around. But I saw a bunch of them through the watch through I had earlier this week.
Uh,
They look fun. I mean, you know,
As someone who's familiar with them, they break the game. The way you trigger them is once that green meter's full, you hit your heavy kick and heavy attack buttons at the same time. But they're completely broken. Like, there's times where if you shoot out your ultimate attack or meter attack, whatever, they will actually take more damage from blocking it than if they do if they just take it head on, depending on who you're playing as. Like,
that makes sense.
the chip damage is unreal. So, how long would you say that you were there playing it? Like a month or two?
At my cousin's,
Yeah.
probably we were there for 3 months.
So,
Yeah,
obviously,
just probably about 2 months worth of playing it before we got tired of it.
right, and obviously, from what you're saying, and me too, Street Fighter 2 mechanically is the better game.
Oh yeah, hands down.
Uh,
Once we left the cousin's place and had our own house, we got a Super Nintendo, and Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat were games 2 and 3 with the Super Mario World pack in. So we did better once once we got that house.
right on. I am going through the manual here, and one kind of interesting thing, it does list pretty well every special move that they have in the manual, which that was kind of something where Mortal Kombat's like, figure it out.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat was pretty brutal with that.
So they kind of put everything on the table. Did you unlock any of the bonus stuff or use a second controller to put any of the codes in?
No, not that I mean, I'm sure the cousins, by the time we got around to it, had already had everything unlocked. It was their only game, so I would assume they had everything unlocked. But yeah, we when I went through to play this weekend, I completely forgot there was cheat codes.
So how did you play over the weekend? Were you on the original hardware or were you on the collection
No, neither. I was
emulator?
yeah, I was being a pirate.
Yar, matey. On the collection, it's kind of interesting is that they unlock everything by default. Like all the codes are already in there to unlock these special stages and the two other players in multiplayer, which is kind of interesting. So it's two characters, Rat King and Karai. They're broken.
Yeah, it's always fun when you unlock someone and then they're game breaking, but to have them right off the bat, that doesn't seem fun.
Yep, like Karai, like just in single player, Karai was stomping me all week. I managed to beat her once or twice, but I was absolutely stomped all week. But if you were having troubles, another interesting thing in the manual is that Konami was plugging their tip line, where you could pay 70 cents a minute to get tips and how to play the game.
I'm sure they made a killing on this game.
Really interesting, for the fact that all the special moves and everything are already in the manual. It's like, I wonder what they told those kids that called in.
Read the manual. Get better.
Get good, scrub. Click.
Yeah.
Thanks for the 70 cents.
Oh no, they would have strung that out. It would have been at least $7 for sure.
Oh yeah, we gotta keep them on hold for a little bit while you look it up on the computer. It's like, oh, hold on.
Yeah. Oh, I'm checking the Konami database. Give me 1 second.
One other interesting thing here is that the game counselors are only available Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you need to call, you got like maybe an hour window after you get out of school.
I'm sure they were super busy too.
For that 1 hour. Yeah, I thought the game was interesting. Definitely not as good as a Street Fighter, but I didn't think it was like a bad game. I think it could have spent more time in the oven, though, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. It could have used a little more time in the oven.
Balancing was a big thing. The game is horribly unbalanced. Like, if you play as one of the three turtles, all of them have a fireball, and if you spam the fireball, usually you do pretty good against the AI on the lower difficulties. And again, the charge meter for firing off the ultimates is just stupid ridiculous. It's completely broken.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the period of video games, right? They either shipped complete working properly or they shipped broken and you just had to deal with it.
Yep. Kind of wonder, definitely, if this game would have come out modern era, there would have been a balance patch out within a month.
You would hope.
I mean, it's Konami, so who knows? But yeah, that was my biggest two complaints for the balance was like completely off. And the thing with Asuka just being this new random character, it's taking up one of the slots that no one had even seen before.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see, you know, maybe some more cartoon characters show up or something, but, you know, it's a pretty good lineup for what it is.
Yep. And I will also say that for its era, even with all the problems, it wasn't one of the worst fighting games out there. There are worse choices that you could have done than picking up this game. I don't want to make it sound like we're completely crapping all over it, because there's a Rise of the Robots, which you could have ended up with, which is absolutely pitiful.
I haven't had the fortune of playing that one yet.
Stay away, it's bad. And I might take a little bit of fire for saying this, but World Heroes, which was an SNK game, I felt like was just a completely generic fighting game, and at least this one, having the Turtles IP, kind of breathed a little bit of life into it.
You know, this Super Nintendo had like a weird period where they had so many of these kind of tournament fighter games. And obviously Street Fighter's either taking the blame for them if they're bad or getting, the praise for putting eyes on it if it's good. But they had a lot of weird licensed games. Like, I remember there was a Justice League fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
There was think there was like a Double Dragon fighting game. I don't know.
Yeah, the
There's a
Double
lot of
Dragon one I
weird.
think was based off of a cartoon too, because it had like a bunch of
Yeah,
weird characters I didn't know who they were.
yeah. It's you got to make money off these IPs, right?
Yep, and even if it didn't have an IP, you had some weird stuff like Pit Fighter on there, which I
Hmm.
absolutely hate that game. Jenny, who is occasionally on Secret Levels and does her own podcast, Nocturnal Mysteries, she's a big fan of Pit Fighter, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Yep. I mean, I would rank this like not at the bottom, but nowhere near top tier. Like, if you're going to play a fighter, this would be an interesting one to play after you've played Super Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah, for sure. This is pretty mid road fighting game.
Yep. It's a good choice if you're a Turtles fan. And if you want to play a fighter game, you want to play the one that came out in Super Nintendo, because again, the Genesis ones and the NES ones were absolute trash.
Definitely.
If this one, I would rate it as playable and can be fun.
Yeah, I would say if you have the right people and you're maybe not looking for something super sophisticated, you could definitely have a good time with this one.
Yeah, it's good, mindless fun. It's not something that, your friend's going to be ticked off because you brought him over to play it, like Pit Fighter.
Well, I don't know. If I came over and someone was like, "Hey, come over and play games," and they threw this on, I might be a little angry.
I didn't think it was that bad, but again, different strokes.
Yeah, maybe being homeless is tinting my my opinion on this.
Well, at least there was something to, pass the time and, while your parents got
That's
everything
true.
set back up, thankfully.
That's true.
Well, before we get ready to call this episode a wrap, do you have anything else you'd like to go over? Any random shout outs?
No. I will say that sometimes life gives you a tournament fighter. It can't always be Turtles in Time, but Turtles in Time is always around the corner.
That's right. If life gives you a tournament fighter, make it turtle soup.
I guess that's what I was going for.
Sounds good to me. Well, if you would like to talk with Soups a bit more, check out the Secret Levels Discord. One thing that I will plug that he didn't is that Soups is often on there with some games, usually every day to vote on, which are always entertaining to look at.
Yes, every day it's a different thing. Maybe we're pitching movies, or maybe we're finding out who to run over with a train. Who knows?
There's always someone to run over the train with. But be sure to check out Secret Levels Discord, because again, the games are on there. They're always entertaining to check out. Say hi while you're there. And other than that, I guess we're going to call this a wrap. Thank you for coming and joining.
Thank you for having me. I will be back anytime.
All right, be glad to have you. Sure, we'll have you back at some point covering something, because there's like a long list of games I still got that I want to cover. We just got to find stuff that other people played during the same era.
Perfect.
All right, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
again for taking time out of your day to listen to another episode of Afterglow. Again, I'd also like to give Soups another shout out, thanking him for coming on and joining me in this big Ninja Turtle celebration for the entire month of June. Last month I mentioned that I had 3 of the 4 shows planned with guest hosts. We now have a guest host for the 4th one as well. I'm really excited about it because if you listen to the Retro YouTube episode, Mr. Roth from Sly Dog Studios will indeed be joining us for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 later this month. So that will be a really cool one. And we also have NES Johnny, who'll be joining us for the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES as well. So 2 more Ninja Turtle NES games that we'll be covering this month. If you're interested in even more retro gaming goodness, you can check the show notes below. We've got links to the Discord as well as the Patreon if you'd like to throw $1 at the show. Friends of the show include Retro Gaming Roundup, Secret Levels, and the Lost and Gone podcast. Our show logo and artwork has been done from TobyVonDoom from Secret Levels, and our intro and outro music is done by Grim from the Lost and Gone podcast. I really hope you guys are enjoying this series of Ninja Turtle game reviews, and if you're looking for a bit more and you haven't listened to the entire backlog, myself and Goobs from Secret Levels covered Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, on the Super Nintendo, and I also covered Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, on the NES. If you want to check out those 2 in the backlog for even more turtly goodness. Once again, thank you, and I will catch you on the next episode of Afterglow.